We're bringing the music back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a late night edition of Daily Dose of Classic. Everybody say hi, YouTube. Guys, we're having a late night edition of Daily Dose of Classic. Of course, this is a WoW Classic waiting room, and of course, we have an obligation to the community. To give everybody a little bit of a daily dose of Classic until Classic comes out in 21 more days. Guys, something else you guys will be very excited to hear today. We got two things on the table. Three things. I'll give you our subject. We are going to talk about World Buffs in Classic today. That is what we're going to be talking about. World Buffs in Classic and how it's going to be, how retail, vanilla, and WoW Classic were different than private servers. That's one. Two, the person that will be joining us today to talk about this is Nano from the Nostalrius team. He's joined us on ClassicCast a few times, our good friend, Nano. And he's going to talk a little bit about why they made some of the decisions they made whenever they made Nostalrius and how things are different. So he's going to be joining us today. We're going to have some fun with that. Make sure to follow him on Twitch, Nano Nost on Twitch. You want to make sure to do that. And then the third thing, I got a tablet. So I will no longer be writing completely ineligibly whenever, or wait, ineligible? Dude, I've been playing football too long. Illegibly. Whenever I'm writing on the board. Yes, pog. Pog you, absolutely. So, guys, without further ado, I want to preface this a little bit, and then I'm going to call Nano. I don't want to keep him up too late, and I'm going to try and keep this a little bit shorter in general. I'm going to try and shorten these a little bit. Again, this is free-form content, right? This is stuff that I'm doing on stream, recording it, boom, posting it to YouTube. So the music makes this so much better. Okay. I feel so much more like in the mood, you know what I'm saying? It's just, okay. Awesome. Okay, let me load this up here. Okay. So, guys, here's what we're going to be talking about today. Top right guy. What's up, top right guy? Wait, what? What the frick is happening? This is wrong. This isn't right at all. What the crap is this about? Display 3? Display 2? Wait, what? What's going on? Why is, what the heck? I don't know why it's doing this. I've never seen it do this before. Sorry about this, guys. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. I don't know why this is happening. Okay. You know what, guys? You know what we do on this stream? We overcome adversity. We overcome adversity and we problem solve. Okay, we overcome adversity and we problem solve. So how are we going to overcome adversity and problem solve today? It's only reading one of my monitors. So guess what? I am going to be adaptable. Yes, that's right. I'm going to be adaptable and I am going to look at my other monitor. How does that sound? Yes, that's right. 5-head. That is a very intelligent thing to do, Esfand. Good job. Okay, so click. There it is. Okay, guys, so... Yes, that's right. I have an IQ of over 15. Okay, so here's what the plan is. We're going to talk about... Let's see if this works. Crap. My tablet is set up to work on the main monitor. Mapping. Okay, saved. Okay. So, guys, these are the list of the buffs available to you. The list of the world buffs available to you. And some people categorize some different buffs as world buffs. Is this working? Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Do you see that moving around? Okay. So some people categorize different buffs as world buffs and non-world buffs, right? So what we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about a lot of the main ones, right? Oh, look at the, dude, look at the handwriting. World buffs, okay? These are the world buffs in Classic, okay? So the world buffs in Classic are as follows. No, they're not, it's not baffs. It's way better than it used to be, okay? You guys complain about everything. Unbelievable. So you have the... let's go ahead and start with Songflower, okay? Songflower, DM tribute buffs. These are from DM North. DM North tribute. Make this a little bit smaller. There you go. DM North tribute. Onyxia head. ZG buffs. Well, actually, you know what? Let's put these in order, right? So before ZG, what is before ZG? Darkmoon Faire. Darkmoon Faire, ZG, and oh yeah, that's right. Warchief's Blessing for the Horde. And I believe Warchief's Blessing is available from the beginning. I believe. Warchief's Blessing. And you know what we'll do? These are the five. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 world buffs. You can also consider the Sands and Silithus, right? And that's added in the Nax patch, which is 5% damage. So we have 5% HP. I don't even know what it's called. 5% HP from towers in 1.12 in Nax patch, phase 6. And then you have 5% damage from Silithus stand or something. I can't remember. Let's just do this. Silithus. We'll just call it Silithus. Silithus. Okay. Also, on top of this, you might consider this a world buff, you might not. Fire resist from UBRS. That's also available at the beginning. And then also, you could consider in BFD, in Blackfathom Deeps, is a frost damage buff, right? Frost. From clicking the orbs. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and call Nano from Nost. I want to go over all these buffs and talk about how they approach the buffs on Nostalrius, on the Nostalrius core on private servers, why they did that, what decisions they made different from retail vanilla, because it was different from retail vanilla for a couple reasons. One, some things they didn't know, and two, they kind of felt they should have done some things different due to the population of the server and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and give Nano a quick call. This is actually kind of throwing me off, looking at, like, I'm used to looking straight ahead. So, yeah. Let's see if Nano's here.
How
Hey,
we doing?
what's up, dude?
I almost fell asleep.
Dude, I'm so sorry. Today was a very hectic day for me. It's funny because like you said, you can typically only do this later, but I was like, well, I want to do daily dose sooner in the day, and then here I am doing it at like close to midnight, so or after midnight for you. But yeah.
I have to get up in like 6 hours for work.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I need a world buff of Red Bulls in the morning.
Yeah, dude. I appreciate you joining me today. I think this is something important to talk about, right? Just so people understand the differences and kind of what some of the decisions were that you guys made. So I talked about all the different world buffs: Songflower, DM North Tribute, Onyxia Head. Let me make sure they can hear you well enough. Turn you up a little bit. Onyxia Head, Darkmoon Faire, ZG buff, Warchief's Blessing, the 5% HP, 5% damage, fire resist from UBRS, and the frost damage buff from BFD.
Mm-hmm.
So in Classic WoW, what we're going to see is that the only one that's available, the only damage buff that's available, or the only world buff that's available, the only ones that are available in phase 1, right, whenever the game starts, are going to be Songflower.
Right.
And Songflower, Warchief's Blessing, right? Songflower, Warchief's Blessing, fire resist from UBRS, the BFD, is that in from the beginning? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay, BFD. And we're not going to have the ZG buffs until this is phase 4. Darkmoon Faire is phase 3. Onyxia Head is phase 2. DM Tribute is phase 2. And then these are phase 6. So we don't actually get a world buff in phase 5. And what would be classic?
Right.
If I'm right.
And to clarify, a lot of people don't realize that the Onyxia Head is held off until phase 2. It was added in the patch 1.4. And based on some of the information that we have so far from Ian on Twitter, responding to a post that I made, months and months ago, was their expectations that 1.4, 1.5 items would be held back until phase 2. So that won't be out until phase 2. That some people won't realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because that's not something that I knew right off the bat. I was under the impression that Onyxia Head was in sooner than that, so I didn't know that initially, but I learned that very recently. Actually, you reminded me of that before. So yeah, there's that, and also something else to touch on. You said they're adding 1.5 items in phase 2. I think they might not be adding 1.5 items in until phase 3, and this is kind of a different subject, but
right. Yeah.
Because I think what they're doing is they're pairing. Yeah, their general rule of thumb is that they're pairing each patch together, or each 2 patches together per phase. So phase 1 is going to be 1.2, phase 2 is going to be 1.4, and so on. But I know whenever we got a chance to actually go visit them before the beta came out, I actually brought this up to I brought this up to them, and I said that I think it would be a good idea to have the 1.5 items in before BWL, because there's like no progression there basically for months and months and months if you don't add anything in, and then all of a sudden things are in at the same time as BWL, and it's just like too many new items at one time. So seems kind of counterintuitive, I guess, to like the new phase system. But let's go in and let's touch on Songflower first. Again, like I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're it's way late for you. You got to be up for work soon.
I'll just be tired tomorrow, but I'm ready to talk now. So
okay.
Let's do this.
Awesome. So let's do it. So first thing we should talk about is Songflower. Okay, Songflower is, I'm gonna clear that up real quick. I'm getting used to using this tablet, so I'm gonna try and be as smooth as possible. I'm still used to my mouse and paint. Now I'm using tablet and Photoshop. So first thing we're going to talk about is Songflower. Songflower Serenade. So what Songflower is, it is a buff that you pick up off the ground. It's a flower that you need to salve in Fellwood. So this is in Fellwood. You pick it up off the ground. And how this works is correct me if I'm wrong, 5% physical and spell crit.
And ranged, yeah.
So melee and ranged
and spell
crit, and then and also 15 stats, right?
Correct.
Okay, so and then it's plus 15 stats. So this is what you get from Songflower Serenade. Was there any resist that you get with that or no? I don't think you get resist, but I'm okay. I was just double checking. Okay, so this is what you get from Songflower Serenade. What you need to do is you need to salve this. There's a quest that you do in the bottom part of Felwood, and you I think it's lesser nether essences is what I would typically use because I was an enchanter for a while at least. So I was disenchanting a bunch of stuff. So I had a bunch of lesser nether essences that I would use for the Cenarian plant salve, and then you would cleanse the Songflower. It was corrupted, and then you have to cleanse it. Once you cleanse it, then you can actually pick up the buff. Right.
So when you cleanse it, you get the buff too. But when it's corrupted, only the person who has the cleansable items will be able to cleanse the Songflower. But once it's cleansed, then anybody can come and click it.
Right. So yeah, good point for sure. No, now here's the thing. On private servers, what you would do is you would get everybody in your raid circled around the flower. All right, the flower would be here in the middle. Everybody would be circled around, and then you'd be in Discord or you'd be in Discord or whatever voice program you're using, and you'd say, okay, everybody click, 3, 2, 1, click, and then everybody clicks it at the same time. Now, as long as you clicked it before it had been picked up, you didn't have to be at exactly the same time, so latency and stuff wasn't a big deal. Everybody could pick it up. You could have 40 people get the buff from the same Songflower. Now, is this confirmed how it worked exactly in vanilla? Because I didn't get Songflower in vanilla. I don't ever remember getting it for a raid.
Yeah, so there's multiple points of evidences that prove it to be true. There's some screenshots of a guild getting Songflower all together. And there's a couple of videos of rogues or other people trying to gank guilds as they're gathering around Songflower to get all together. So it's pretty confirmed that it was a thing back in vanilla. What we don't know exactly is what the margin of error was in terms of clicking, and whether it was pretty close to exactly the same time or as lenient as we had it on our core. So we don't know that exactly.
Right. Okay, and I just saw the screenshot that you sent me in Discord too, and I just loaded that up. So yeah. So good to know. So we know that at least at some point in vanilla it was possible, but like you said, there's a few different like factors there that you're not 100% sure about. So this is going to be like whenever I talk about world buffs, I don't consider everything that I had mentioned earlier, but this is one of the main ones. Whenever I think of world buffs, off the top of my head, I think of like Songflower, DM East, ZG buff, and Oni head. That's like the 4 that I think of. But then also there's like a number of other ones, right? As far as the main world buffs, this is going to be the only one that's available right off the bat.
Right.
So this is going to be your phase 1 guy. Also in phase 1, you have the fire resist buff. So let's talk about that next.
One thing we didn't mention, the Songflower Serenade is a 1 hour buff.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, 1 hour. 1 hour on the buff. Next up. You know what I'm gonna do? I have layers now. This is the one time layers are not a bad thing. On paint, I didn't have layers. So
didn't you get layers in your hair?
I did actually get layers in my hair. That's true. My mom gave me layers in my hair.
They'll go away by phase 2.
Yeah, it'll be gone by phase 2. Nothing to worry about. So okay, layer 3. We have let's talk about the UBRS buff. Okay. What the UBRS fire resist buff is you go in, and this is right outside of BWL, right? So you would go into Upper Blackrock Spire, or really Blackrock Spire. I always say UBRS, but it's really BRS. You don't actually need to go to the upper side. You just go right under the bridge.
It's BRS. It's middle Blackrock.
Yeah, middle Blackrock Spire. Okay.
Or Purgatory Blackrock Spire.
Yeah.
For the religious hooks.
Right. So what you do is you mind control. There's 2 orcs. It's a group of 2 orcs. Do you remember the exact name of the one? I think it's do you remember the exact name of which orc it is? I always forget, and we just mind control both of them, whichever one works.
I don't know. You just stand. I'm not a priest. I just stand there and wait for him to
Right. So I forget the exact name of which orc it is. If you pick the wrong one, just mind control the other one, right? So don't kill it. But you run in there, it's right past the bridge. And what raids do is they usually go in, like priests go in, one priest goes in, and he's the mind control guy. And 2 mind control. And everybody else in the raid goes in like 2 groups at a time or something, right? I always say 2 groups at a time, and then there's always some leeway for people to go in and out or whatever, because it always ends up being full anyway. So people go in there, and that one priest, what he does is he casts the fire resist buff on each person in the raid. This is if you want to get the fire resist buff for your raid. This is nice in Molten Core. This is nice for Rag. This is nice in BWL, and it's right there. So if you want to run in there before Molten Core and grab it and help everybody out, that's nice. Do you remember the exact value of the fire resist buff? I remember it's huge. Like 67 or 87?
I believe.
83? Okay. So 83, I guess, plus 83 fire resist. I was thinking it was 87. So yeah, plus 83 fire resist, which is massive, right? You take this and couple this with like plus 60 from like a paladin aura or something, and then right off the bat you're at 143, right? You're over 140 fire resist without any other gear. So
yeah. And then plus any tier gear, like 150 is kind of a break point for fire resist or for any resists. So most tier gear has fire resist. So pretty early on, you're going to get into that 150 threshold pretty easily.
Indubitably. So
Indubitably.
I think now, am I forgetting something else that gives you 15 fire resist? Or am I making this up in my head? I don't know. This might be something else.
I think that give you 15 fire resist.
Maybe, but I don't know if it stacks with fire resist aura. Is Mark of the Wild?
It doesn't stack with aura. Mark of the Wild.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Okay. So yeah, this is the BRS fire resist buff. This also lasts for 1 hour. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so this is correct, and you can get this from phase 1 as well. So these are 2 buffs for phase 1.
So there's one difference between what people experience on the Nostalrius core and what I believe happens on the vanilla core, because we couldn't test it on the beta, obviously. But for most MC NPC abilities, there's not cooldowns associated with those abilities. So there's been a lot of exploits over the years over specific abilities, like maybe in Zul'Gurub, where you could use AoE shadow bolts and do a bunch of damage to some spiders. But also with this mind control buff, you could just spam it, and I believe there's actually a cooldown associated with it on the actual ability, so you won't be able to just like get 40 people to get their buff pretty quickly. It'll take you a little while.
Okay.
But do you remember exactly what that
okay.
is?
Okay, so there was, so whenever you guys did this, there was a cooldown, but you just didn't know what it was. So
yeah, so anything that we couldn't prove to be true, we didn't do. If we couldn't find out the exact value, we didn't just add a cooldown.
Right. Okay. So yeah, this is good to know, right? And this is the big thing. Like a lot of people assume like everything on the Nost core, everything on private servers is like, as far as like world buffs and a lot of that stuff goes, is going to be the same as it was on retail vanilla and what it's going to be on classic. And people just either they didn't play back then, or they didn't get everything back then. Because I know I certainly didn't. Like I raided like fairly casually back then. I didn't go and get all the world buffs. So a lot of this stuff I'm like well practiced in getting all the world buffs on private server, but not so much in retail vanilla. I didn't go around and get them regularly. So it's just very interesting to see like what all is different. Which is why we brought Nano on. Right, because he's that was his job. His job was literally to fact check everything whenever they were putting together Nostalrius. So
true.
Next up,
big true.
There it is. Next up, we have Warchief's Blessing is phase 1. So I don't know a whole lot about Warchief's Blessing. It's a horde buff.
Yes, it is a horde buff. The paladins won't know about it.
Yeah. So. What I know about Warchief's Blessing, I think it's from the Onyxia attunement.
Correct.
So from Oni attunement chain. This is going to be available in phase 1 as well. So we'll just go ahead and write that at the bottom. It's going to be available in phase 1 as well. So what all does Warchief's Blessing give you? I know there's 15% haste. Is that right?
Yes. So it increases your hit points by 300. So 300 HP. Nothing to sneeze at. 15% haste for melee attacks only. So hunters don't care. Spellcasters don't care. And you get 10 MP5.
Plus 10 MP5. So it's not, I mean, it's not necessarily terrible for casters and hunters because you get 300 HP and 10 MP5. But this is really like this is a warrior rogue thing and tank thing, I guess.
100%. Yep. There was one thing that some alliance warriors and rogues really like to do is there was a guy in my guild who leveled up a horde character to mind control his warrior when the Warchief's Blessing was being dropped, so he could, which enabled him to actually receive the Warchief's Blessing because he was temporarily horde under the mind control buff.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea if that's proper or not.
Okay.
It's possible that it is, but it's very possible that it's not.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see too. So that was this is going to be a private server question mark because this is something you could do on private servers. I remember like, especially whenever I raided with Salad Bakers a little bit, like a bunch of the warriors would do that. Be like, okay, time to get like Warchief's Blessing. So they would get like a group of people to like have a second guy like you said, and it'd just be like 4 or 5 warriors would all get Warchief's Blessing. So yeah, this will be really interesting to see if this is something that Alliance can do. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, it's from the Oni attunement chain, right? Specifically, it's from is the quest to kill Rend, right? Yeah. Rend Blackhand. So, quest to kill Rend. Is this better, by the way? The handwriting with my tablet, is it better than it was with my mouse?
I think it's cool. I'm following him along like you're my teacher.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so next up.
My tomato teacher.
Yeah. You know what's funny too? I'm not even using a whiteboard. I'm like super old school. I'm using a chalkboard. So it's like the green chalkboard. Okay, so next up. Those are all the phase 1 buffs. In phase 2, we're going to have Onyxia head. Just go ahead and go after Warchief's Blessing because Onyxia attunement. So Onyxia head, this is from the quest to turn in. I say Oni head. This is Onyxia head or Nefarian's head. It's the same buff, but you can get it in phase 2. In phase 3, you can get the buff again for the second turn in. So quest to turn in Oni's head after killing her. Quest gives you an item like the Onyxia Tooth Necklace, which gives you 1% hit, is really good. But a lot of times what people will do is they will hand out these Onyxia heads because Onyxia is on a 3-day reset. And it's like, hey, don't use your head until before raid. That's how it works on private servers. And this buff is one of the big, seeing how this is going to play out is one of the biggest question marks of, I think, of Classic compared to private servers, right? Yeah. But I'll explain why in a second. So what you get with Onyxia head, it is
10% spell crit.
10% spell crit, 5% melee, right?
Correct. Melee and ranged.
10% spell crit, 5% melee / ranged. I think it also gives you
140 AP.
140 AP. That's right. Is that just melee or is it melee and ranged AP? Do you know?
Pretty sure it's just melee.
Okay.
I'm not sure 100%.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't quite remember either because I don't play Hunter. But yeah, it gives you attack power, melee and ranged crit, spell crit, and I think that's it. I can't remember anything else. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Let's go ahead and say melee. So, really, really, really good buff, particularly for casters. This is also really good for Ret Paladins too, because this spell crit, if you're using oils on your weapons, this 10% spell crit is what it's oil crit chance is off of spell crit. So this is also really, really good for paladins. If you get a crit on one of your frost oil or shadow oil or something like that, if you have that on your weapon, it'll proc vengeance. So also really, really good for paladins. Huge deal for paladins. So how this works in retail vanilla, is there is a 6-hour timer, I believe. There's a 6-hour timer on turning this head in, right? So
clarify that you can turn the head in whenever you want.
Oh,
but if there's already a head hanging up in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, then the buff will not drop.
Right. So if you want to do the buff, you have to wait until the head is gone, right? You can see it hanging up and everything. So, yeah, you can see all that there. On private servers, what you guys did on Nost is you guys said, okay, we're gonna make it to where anybody can turn the head in at any time. And well, I mean, you can turn the head in at any time regardless, but whenever you turn the head in, regardless of whether there's one already up there or not, it was going to give everybody in Stormwind the buff.
Correct.
That's what you guys decided to do. Why did you guys decide to do that instead of the way they had it in vanilla, where there was the big timer?
Yeah, so one on the base Mango's emulator, there was no timer, so we would have to go back and change that to add a timer. And by even the time Nostalrius came around and we were talking about this, people had gotten so used to being able to drop Onyxia heads or Neff heads constantly every time they wanted to raid, and there's just so many players and so many raiding guilds that it kind of played along with our decision to do things like dynamic respawns and that kind of thing. So we felt like we couldn't arrive at a number that seemed right in terms of how we would dynamically reduce the cooldown timer, and so we decided to not mess with it. And to be honest, there have been like a huge negative community feedback if we would have done that, because people love these buffs. They love the high numbers that these buffs gives them. They push their parses, so to speak, for the DPS. And if we were to take that away, then we would have gotten a huge uproar, and we just didn't want to deal with that. To be frank, so we didn't. So we just kind of let it be.
Okay. Do you think that the way that you guys did it with that many players, right? Part of the reason why it was such a big deal is because you had so many more players playing on Nos, or I guess playing on private servers in general, than there were on like a typical server back in the day, right? Because the original server cap was about 2,500 to 3,000. On Nos, you would see upwards of 10K people, right?
Yeah, and it was an international server, so at any given time it would be like prime time for Asia, it would be prime time for Europe, it would be prime time for US, and it was just like the population never really had an off time. I think the lowest population, like in the main, once it got rolling, was like 6.5 to 7,000 was the lowest population the server ever really saw, and peaking at like 11 to 12,000. So there's just a lot of players.
So I think in Classic we're probably going to see something similar, but in Phase 2 they're saying they're getting rid of layering. So if they get rid of layering in Phase 2, I don't know if they're going to go with the original server cap or with a higher server cap. And this is something that's kind of a lot of people are concerned about. I'm now, here's the thing for me, right? I have a vested interest in this a little bit. Rep Paladins scale hugely with world buffs. There's a huge difference if I have my world buffs or not, and Onyxia head is one of the really big ones, because I get a benefit from all the stats where almost every other class doesn't. But regardless of that, do you think Blizzard's if Blizzard decides to go with the original like 6-hour timer decision, do you think that makes the most sense for what they're gonna do, or not?
So, to preface my answer,
Mhm.
in general, I don't like world buffs.
Mhm.
I think that they, especially when you start stacking them, they trivialize the raiding content to a large degree. I don't have a great. I have a couple solutions, so to speak, but I don't have any great solutions on how to avoid trivializing the content.
Mhm.
But with this Onyxia head, I hope that they don't, or I hope that they continue to have a cooldown timer, so the availability of the Onyxia head buff is lowered, and therefore its impact on the overall rating scene is less.
Mhm.
But I do have a concern if they have a timer of the what impact it's going to make on players. So, like as you mentioned, this is a really good, powerful buff that you want to make sure that you have every time that you raid
Mhm.
as a rep paladin. If there's a cooldown, what it's going to force you to do is going to force you to either raid without it because you can't control when it gets dropped,
Mhm.
or you camp Stormwind for days to try to get the timer where the world buff is dropped. You get it, and then you log out until raid time.
Yeah, which is gonna prevent people from being logged in and actually doing stuff and playing the game, um,
Yeah, and
unless they
so
play an alt or something.
right, but even still, I don't think it's in Blizzard's best interest to design a game system that encourages people to log off and stay offline. It actually gets worse with Darkmoon Faire buff, which we'll talk about next.
Mhm.
But yeah, so my concern is that I do have a solution that is, I think, a change, which is I would prefer that world buff timers, the buff duration, would continue to tick while you're offline.
Really?
That would be my solution to the world buff issue in general.
Okay.
And the reason is that one, it lowers the overall number of world buffs that you have, but
Mhm.
also it doesn't encourage you to log off and hold your buffs until raid time for sometimes days at a time.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That's really interesting to think about it that way, actually. Yeah, I think the way that it's designed is kind of bad, like you're saying, where you're encouraging people to log off and save their buffs. You're encouraging people to just sit in Stormwind and not do anything until they get a buff. That is assuming they're like a hardcore raider and they're trying to like push their they're trying to push numbers, right? They're trying to get a higher parse or whatever like that.
Yep.
Now, here's some things that I think are good about the 6-hour timer. I think that you are going to I think it's going to make guilds attempt to work together a little bit more in terms of coordinating when the buffs are going to be dropped and whatnot, which I think is cool, right? I think any sort of like added social dynamic to the game where you have to like work and coordinate with other players, I think is a good thing. Um, I think that moving away, like you said, you're not a big fan of world buffs to begin with.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that something like this kind of goes along with that thought process of like you don't need to have world buffs for every single raid, right? It's not like the raids were not designed to require needing world buffs to complete all the content. Now, if your guild wants to do that, and if your guild wants to say, okay, get this and this and this, that's your guild's decision, right? And whatever your guild leader and whatever your raid leader says goes, and that's the type of guild that you're in, and you chose to be in that guild and all that. However, you don't have to play the game that way, right? So you find that you find people to play the game the way you want to play the game, or to play with you the same type of way that you want to play. I said that kind of weird, but I think everybody understands what I'm saying. So yeah, what we're gonna see different here, I think it's very, very likely that we see the 6-hour timer, and you know, to the dismay of probably some hardcore raiders, this is probably what you're gonna see. Is I doubt they're gonna deviate from this. The only way that I could see them possibly deviating from it is probably them reducing the time, but I
Yeah.
just don't think they're gonna do it. I think I think it's probably going to be the way it is, because like I looked at it before, right? The 3 design principles, like they did not want to mess with any of the 1.12 data, right? They're actually actively trying to do as no changes as possible, even though there's some things that are going to be inherently different.
Yeah. Some things that, like, I'm noticing some people in chat who are talking about, like, they don't like world buffs either. One thing I do know is that I think that world buffs need to stay in some form in raids to help push certain guilds who are having struggles on certain bosses to help overcome that hurdle, and that's why they exist to begin with. They don't exist for pushing 1400 DPS on MC bosses. That's for rogues and warriors. That's not why they exist.
Right, and spamming all your sappers and pulling extra mobs into the boss so you get bonus damage. And
yes.
Yeah. Just like randomly there's an imp next to you and your blade flurry. It's just like, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. I think we touched on Onyxia head pretty good. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, so it's a 2-hour buff timer, so it lasts quite a while. And when the Nefarian head gets added, the Ani head and the Nef head are on separate timers. So
I didn't know that.
If the Ani head is up and the Nef head is not, you can get the Nef buff, vice versa. So basically the cheat code is if you see the head hanging up in Stormwind or on the pike in Orgrimmar, then you can't get the buff, and if you don't see it, you can.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that the Nef and the Onyxia head were on separate buff timers. So yeah, good to know. Very good to know. Next up, we have click. That's the only. Oh, DM East. We didn't talk about, or DM. Sorry, DM North.
Oh yeah, tribute buffs.
DM North. Tribute buffs. So the DM North tribute buffs are a set of 3 buffs. I believe it's HP, attack power, and spell crit. Is that right?
Yep. So there's Fangus's ferocity. That's the attack power.
It's 200.
Adds 200.
That's right.
There's Slipkick's savvy, which adds spell crit 3%. And Moldar's Moxie, which increases your overall stamina by 15%.
Okay. So you have health, you have attack power, you have 3% spell crit. How you get the DM North tribute buffs is there are you have all these bosses in Dire Maul North. They call it a tribute run because you're passing all the bosses until you get to the very end. There's 2 bosses at the end that you can kill. Well, one that you can kill and one that you have to kill, right? You have to kill the last boss. Once you kill the last boss, you talk to an ogre who's there, and then you become basically king of the ogres. And all the ogres become friendly to you. Whenever all the ogres become friendly to you, you talk to the bosses that you skipped, you didn't kill them, and because you didn't kill them, they give you a blessing, they give you a buff. What is AP? AP is attack power. So, yeah, this is pretty cool. These buffs last 2 hours, I believe. So 2 hours. So you run through, you grab all 3 of these buffs. This is like the typical rotation of what you would do, right? You maybe, this is how I remember doing it. We'd get DM East, then we'd go to Stormwind.
DM North.
Or frick. The reason I keep saying DM East is
Stop thinking about jump runs.
I was talking to somebody about jump runs earlier today, so I keep saying East. So DM North, yeah, DM North, Stormwind. This is how we would do it. Stormwind, get Oni head. Then we would do ZG, which we talk about later. And then we would go get Songflower. That's how I remember doing it.
My guild would do slightly differently. So people would get their Dire Maul buffs, and then each person would fly themselves to Westfall and run down to Westfall and log out at, like we called the Orchard, which is the place where the paladin quest is, where she gets attacked by the pirate. And then we would go get ZG, then port to Stormwinds, get the buff, then port to Darnassus, fly to Felwood, get Songflower, then port to Ironforge, and then go to the raid.
Yeah. So this seems like it takes forever, right? Dire Maul North, we like a tribute run. Once like you know how to do it, it'll take you like 20 minutes. Like it doesn't take you very long to do a tribute run. But then one person does a tribute run, and then you invite the whole raid in there, and they all run through, and they get all the buffs because you clear it you clear it in a way that everybody can go. The heck? The top of my tablet thing just flew off. I gotta go. Oh, whatever. Yeah, I don't know how that even happened. But is this still right? Okay, it still works. Yeah, so this is how we would do it, and then we would get Songflower last because it was the shortest. So yeah, and that way you have like the most uptime with all of them together. Yeah, so Dire Maul North Tribute. There's nothing weird about this on private servers.
Yeah, it's pretty standard for almost every raiding guild. Not even just the most hardcore raiding guild, but like almost every raiding guild would at least drop ZG and Ani head buff. So
well, with tribute, I mean, like is with the tribute, like there's nothing weird like specific to private servers that was changed, was there?
No, the only couple variables that we don't know 100% is how long that ogre at the end of the tribute run that gives you the king buff, how long he actually stays up and allows you to get the buff. We don't know that exactly. And the other one is we don't know if there was any limits to the amount of players who could get that buff from any given instance, whether it was infinite, which it is on private servers, or if there was some hard cap. We don't really know.
Okay. Yeah, that's two really good points, because I think it was up for like 1 hour on private servers, but we don't know exactly how long for real vanilla. So yeah, very good. That's a phase 2 thing. So those are the 2 buffs that are going to be available in phase 2: Oni head and DM North Tribute.
Yeah.
Next,
in terms of power, that 15% stamina buff is huge. Like it's highly underrated in terms of what it actually does for the raid.
Yeah, I know. I remember whenever we were doing Nef, like having that buff for our main tank on the first Nef kill was absolutely massive. Like I remember, if I remember this correctly, I remember doing Chromagus, killing Chromagus, going through the whole thing, and then leaving, and we just came back the next night to kill Nefarian with world buffs, just because the stamina buffs was going to be so huge. At least on private servers is how we did it, or how we had to do it one time when we weren't quite geared up yet. So yeah, next up, Darkmoon Faire. This is going to be phase 3 now. Darkmoon Faire. So Darkmoon Faire is put in the BWL patch. And what this is, you talk to the sage, and based on what answers you give the sage, it like tries to like read, it's like a fortune teller, right? Oh, ask you this question. How would you approach this? How would you approach that? It reads your fortune and it gives you a certain buff. And it will give you a roll of a certain buff. Some buffs are static and other ones are dynamic, right?
Yes. So the only one that's dynamic is the damage, which ranges from 1% to 10%.
Okay. So the only one is damage. And that was the one that pretty much every DPS is going to get this one. So 1 to 10%. And
that's answer 1 and then answer 1 for those that don't know. One interesting thing is that the buff on your actual buff bar always shows 10%, but it varies. And so the way that you can figure it out is you look at your character sheet and then you hover over your damage variables and it'll have a multiplier. So on your melee one, it'll be like 1 times 1.00. Then if you got the buff, it'd be times 1.07 or 0.8 or 1.10 for the winner.
Yeah. So and that would be added together with your it's additive to any talents. Is that correct, or was that just what the people just think that? I don't know if that's 100% confirmed or not. But like for example, if I had like two-handed weapon spec and it was like 6% bonus damage with two-handers, and I got a 10% roll, it would show as 16 plus 16% to be additive as a bonus on the character sheet.
My understanding is that it is at the end of everything. Whatever the character sheet damage was, it would multiply from there.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
I would say yes at the end of the day.
Okay, so so it would basically be, so it either, so you're pretty sure that it works like basically 100% plus talents, parentheses, plus DMF.
I believe so. I don't know 100% because I don't have the reference quite.
Right.
But yeah.
So we'll see for sure exactly how that works come Classic, whether it works this way or whether it works this way.
Some other buffs in case you aren't a damage dealer. There's magic resistance by 25%, armor, spirit, int, stamina, strength, agility, and there's something for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of guides online where it just shows you what to answer for everything. So, next up. It was Darkmoon Faire, Phase 3.
And Zul'Gurub buff.
And Zul'Gurub is going to be Phase 4. That's right. So, ZG Head. Or ZG Heart. I always call it the head.
Heart, yeah.
Yeah. ZG,
Heart of a car.
Heart of Hacker. Heart of a car. Okay, so what Heart of a car is, you kill Hakar, you kill the last boss in ZG. This is going to be Phase 4. It was going to be Phase 3 before, but they separated ZG from BWL, so good change. That's something that was really good. Not a change, but deviated from the original plan for Classic for 4 phases to 6 phases. So, guys, unbelievable. Okay, so this is plus 15% all stats. And
10% movement speed.
10% move speed that doesn't stack with your move speed enchant. Is that right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Let's just say think it doesn't stack with move speed. So if this doesn't stack with move speed, this basically is 2%. Because you're probably going to have move speed enchant, more than likely.
Yep.
And then I don't think there's anything else with this.
So a couple things to note that are different than what private server people might be used to.
Okay.
Is that prior to patch 1.11 in retail vanilla, this buff stayed on you if you died. It was like a flask, which makes it super strong. Everyone just has 15% all stats for the whole rest of the raid, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. And then you add the Biju Zanzas to that, which adds another 50 stamina and 50 spirit, which also lasted through death, which is a crazy amount of stamina that you're just adding to the whole raids, and increases your margin of error. Mm-hmm. That will almost certainly not be the case on Classic because they're using the patch 1.12 as their database, and I'm doubting that they're going to add in this buff to this world buff.
So yeah, they're because like you said, they're going to be using the 1.12 version. More than likely, these will drop whenever you die.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind. Yeah, I think that's everything to talk about with that one. So next up, we have ZG Phase 4, Phase 5, there's nothing.
Correct.
And then Phase 6. So in Phase 6, and this is one that this is less common. Right, we'll talk about the Phase 6 buffs, right?
These will be new for most private server players. Mm-hmm. Because the world events did not work.
Right. So towers in EPL It gives you 5% stamina. Was it 5% stamina or 5% health?
So this one's very specific. When you take over a tower, there is a little shrine that you can go to in EPL that will give you 5% HP. But it only lasts for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a zone-wide buff that applies in Naxxramas if your faction controls all 4 towers. So that's separate than this 5% health bonus.
Mm-hmm. So zone-wide buff. That was a damage buff, right?
Yes.
It's like 5% damage for everybody.
Right.
5% damage.
And then they copied that in TBC and Hellfire.
Mm-hmm. For all the Plaguelands, Strath, Skolo, and Nax, if I'm right.
I don't know if it applied to Western Plaguelands.
Okay, maybe it was just EPL then. If it was just EPL, then it wouldn't count Skolo either.
Right.
For some reason, I thought it was both Plaguelands, Strath, Skolo, and Nax, but it's very likely that I was just mistaken. So maybe it was just Eastern Plaguelands. Next up is the Silithus Sand.
Yep. So these things were little clickable objects on the ground that were geysers that were spitting sand into the air. You would pick it up, you would bring it back to your war effort, like the Alliance or Horde areas in Silithus, and you would get a 5% damage buff for 30 minutes.
5% damage, 30 minutes. From turning in, it was, like you said, it was a repeatable quest for the Silithus. I can't remember what it was called exactly. I never got this for raid because it was only 30 minutes. You're typically not going to see people getting these just because they're so short, right? By the time you get this and everything with all the other buffs, if you try and get everything, it's gonna, so much of it is gonna run out. You might as well be like logging off and not doing any trash in between bosses. So, yeah.
These are the towers in EPL and the Silithus, which is what the official name of it is, were 2 World PvP events that they added at the last patch in WoW, which is 1.12. Most players, didn't really bother with these. They did with the towers in EPL because they were pushing Nax, and that zone-wide buff was a big deal. But the Silithus basically didn't matter. I'm not sure why. I mean, you get honor points and some reputation with Cenarian Circle if you turn it in, but there was no real point of the World PvP event.
Right. Now, you touched on this a second ago. It was kind of cool that this is the first makings, and you'll see a lot of this in Burning Crusade. These are the first makings of, at the end of Vanilla, these are the first makings of things that you see in Burning Crusade, right? Like the towers in EPL is kind of like Hellfire Peninsula. The tokens that you see in AQ40 and in Nax, very similar to how they did tier gear in Burning Crusade as well. So also with how highly optimized Nax gear is. Nax gear is absolutely insane. Not only is it higher item level, there's like a big power spike because the item level is better and the items are optimized way better. There's like no wasted stats for the intent of that gear. For example, like the Paladin gear has like no strength or no physical damage stats. It is a straight up Holy Paladin set. And that's kind of what you saw in Burning Crusade with the different versions of the tier sets for different people. So yeah, there's that. Is there anything else?
So one thing going backwards a little bit, I wanted to mention with the Darkmoon Faire buff. So that Darkmoon Faire is only up for the first full week of each month. So Sunday to Saturday of the first week of the month. Now, one thing, most raiders will raid the first day or 2 of the reset. So a Tuesday reset for US, Wednesday reset for Europe. They'll get the DM buff or Darkmoon Faire buff, and they'll have it for that raid. And a lot of the players in my guild would then take their time, park themselves outside of the Darkmoon Faire, and roll for the new 10% buff. And once they got 10% or 9% and they thought that was good, they would then log off until the next raid day. And they would be offline for 4 or 5 days. And again, the idea that I'm coming back to that I mentioned before is that I think that's bad game design and not good for Classic's health as a whole to encourage people to be offline for days at a time. So I'm not sure if they're going to do anything about these things. I have raised this issue to the team in general through the contact that I have. I don't know if they've really had any discussions about it or not, but we'll see.
Now, something that I think is there's something to consider. I think with retail or with Classic, right? That wasn't the case on private servers. Private servers had a very like hardcore, like min-maxy meta, and you saw that a lot of like the hardcore private server players were like mythic raiders in retail who just didn't like retail anymore and they wanted to play vanilla on a private server or something like that. So that's kind of where like that hardcore mentality comes from, like the speed running and this and that. Like you have like MDI and Mythic Dungeons, Mythic Plus, all that kind of stuff. That mentality kind of comes from retail, and it is kind of like flipped back into the private server scene and classic WoW in that regard. So I do think that a lot of the people that you see playing classic WoW, they're not going to be as concerned about getting their world buffs and keeping every single buff to the extent that you saw on private servers. So that is a good thing, right? Where you probably won't see as many people just like being like, oh, I gotta log off to save 17 seconds right now, you know? But there certainly are going to be people like that. And I keep seeing this thing. I keep seeing this. People are like, oh, like, well, you should just play the game how you want to play it and this and that. And that's how I feel, right? But a lot of the same people that are saying play the game the way that you want to play it condemn the people who are min-maxing. And it's like, you realize how counterintuitive that is. Like, let them play the game the way they want to play it as well. It's just that different people want different things.
No, those are tryhards and we dismiss them.
Right. So yeah, you're not allowed to try hard at all in classic WoW. No, but yeah, no, that's my thing. It's like I think if you feel a certain way, then you should be accepting of the people who want to min max and stuff as well. For me, I'm more of a progression style player. I'm not going to play in a hardcore. I'm not going to run a hardcore guild. More progression style and all that. So just kind of like in the middle. Anything else? BFD. This is one that you're probably not going to see anybody get, but just to talk about it, and just to touch on it just for a second. This is in from the beginning, as far as I know. And Blackfathom, there is a frost damage buff from going to the end. It's plus 15 frost damage.
It's actually 2 spots where you can get it. When you kill the Murloc boss, there's an orb there, and when you kill the end boss, there's an orb there.
2 orbs. Can use either, and it gives you plus 15 frost damage, which is, I mean, it's insane at level 20. Plus 15 frost damage is awesome at that level. But at level 60, it's not really that much. It also gives you like 5 spirit or something.
5 int, 5 spirit.
5 int,
which
5
is
spirit.
nothing.
Yeah, which is it's negligible. So yeah, this exists, right? But you're probably not going to see people getting this.
I've raided with a mage that would get this for every single raid, and when early on when BWL just came out, he developed himself like this summoning team. Because, you know, private servers, you could have all the accounts for free, right?
Yeah.
So he had a summon bot at BFD, and he had like multi-box clickers there, and then he had one in Fellwood, and then he had one in Blackrock Mountain hidden. And so he would summon himself to go to Blackfathom, and then go get the buff, and then summon himself to Fellwood and get a new Songflower, and then summon himself back to Blackrock Mountain. So like in between BWL and MC, you wouldn't even know he was gone.
Yeah, that's super funny. I think that's absolutely hilarious.
And he was a good player. He top damage meter. So
yeah, there you go. That's how you do it. Is there anything else? I think we hit on every buff. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Like, there's a lot of speculation about how this is going to play out in reality with Classic and compared to a lot of people who've been playing vanilla on private servers recently. What we do know is that world buffs are very strong, especially early on. Like, they can basically, when you add up world buffs and consumables, they like double your like as a caster and like without BWL, if you have a flask fully consumed and have world buffs, those world buffs and consumables are more than all the items on your character.
Yeah,
They are better than the rest of your character.
it is.
So
It is pretty
they're very
insane.
strong.
Yeah. And speaking of consumes, there is a few like world consumes, right? Like you talked about the ZG ones, and should we go into these? I mean, just to kind of touch on them a little bit. The ZG consumes, you turn in the bijous, like you said, and then there's also the blasted lands. There's also the blasted lands consumes where you can get like plus 25, I think. Is it plus 25 for everything?
Yeah, int and strength and agility.
Yeah, plus 25 bonus stat.
Yeah, so there's the Zanzas from ZG. In the 1.12 version, they only take 1 Biju instead of 3, so yay for that. Blasted Lands buff. There's also things like holiday events that have some buffs associated to them. Specifically, the Valentine's Day has some really good candy.
Oh, right.
There's
I think it's haste,
on
right?
private servers where you can put them in wrapping paper and save their duration forever.
Oh, okay.
So you could industrial farm Valentine's Day candies and give yourself extra consumable buffs forever. And some of them are quite strong, like melee 2% hit. That's nothing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think there was hit and was there a haste one? Am I wrong? Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I was just getting hit and haste because it was two H's confused. But yeah, it's really good basically from like Valentine's Day, from the holiday buffs. So yeah,
we don't need to go all into consumables because there's a whole
that's almost a whole nother talk. Yeah, it's almost a whole nother talk. And you need to go to bed because I have kept you like all night. So guys, big shout out, big thanks to Nano from the Nostalrius team, twitch.tv/nanonost. He's one of the really, really good people in the classic scene, good friend of ours. Go give him a follow. Absolutely. And you know, I know a lot about classic, right? There's a lot of people that know a lot about classic. Nano is the authority when it comes to like just methodically, mechanically going through hours and hours, or sorry, I guess pages and pages of information and stuff, looking back on like forum posts and Wayback Machine and all this stuff to kind of put together the quality of server like Nostalrius, which is really one of the big things that sparked this whole legacy server movement. Nano's the guy. I mean, he's the guy who did that. So yeah, so big shout out to Nano. Nano, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on and helping me out with this episode, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go crash and go to work in 5 hours.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. So again, thanks so much, guys. Guys, please follow Nano, and Nano, we'll see you later.
All right. Yeah, thanks.
See you, dude. So guys, this has been another episode of Daily Dose of Classic. If you like this type of content, this is going on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/esfandtv. If you came in late, you can catch the earlier parts of this. This is more long form, free flowing, not scripted. I kind of come up with a topic that I'm going to talk about that day, and I'm going to be doing this pretty much every day. I haven't done it 100% every day like we didn't do one yesterday, but the semi-daily dose of classic. This is a classy channel. This is the WoW Classic waiting room. This is where people come for high-level, 5-head, vanilla brain, intellectual discussion. Not, you know what? Never mind. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this. And YouTube, I'll see you later. Everybody say bye, YouTube. Everybody wave and say bye, YouTube.